All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and start us off. We have an hour together. I'm very grateful for everybody who's joined us this afternoon. I think many of you participated in a presentation, a webinar presentation on February 15th, at which time we shared our draft of the Priority Climate Action Plan. So we went ahead and submitted that plan on March 1st to EPA, and we pivoted since that time to the development of our climate pollution reduction implementation grants, which we intend to submit to the EPA. Consider what I'm sharing with you to be appropriate from an order of magnitude and a focused perspective, but the budget numbers will decidedly shift as we polish this grant, but the general areas of emphasis and so forth would remain. So, I like to start by sharing this photo. Many of you who are on the call today were at the Kauffman Foundation on, I think it was December 1st, and there was a whole lot of heart in the room. And I think it's that spirit of collaboration and passion and commitment that is underlying all of the work that we're doing here. I want to start off by saying, what are we going to get from this grant? And this list, to me, as I put it together, is just phenomenally compelling. We're talking about 20 resilience hubs and putting in energy efficiency improvements at 600 single-family homes and at 15 multifamily buildings, representing about 420 units. We're going to weatherize, we propose to weatherize 12,000 homes, install 30 EV charging ports, 62 solar arrays at a variety of building types, from resilience hubs to urban farms to area nonprofits. We propose to purchase 105 either low carbon or electric vehicles, plant 15,000 trees and 600 residential native landscapes, 36 orchards, 150 school and community gardens, 15 miles of green streets and bike lanes, 11,400 e-bikes, and 2 to 3 commercial composting sites. My intention here is not to be comprehensive, but I wanted to present to you kind of in one snapshot the full body of work that's proposed here. And it's worth noting that these ideas didn't come out of nowhere. Every single idea that's included in our proposal was born from the community, from one of the many conversations that we've had the last 6 months and even before. And one thing that's fundamental to me and powerful about the work that we're proposing, which is rooted in partnership with all of you, is that there's an extraordinary level of collaboration in this community. And so there are many different networks and partnerships and types of collaboration at all levels that I think we have the opportunity to take advantage of as we move forward on this grant. The ideas that have been proposed and that are included here are specific, they're actionable, they're investable, they're born of an incredible amount of experience. When I look back over, say, the last 1 or 2 decades, there have been a lot of absolutely terrific projects all across the community on all the different topical areas that we're talking about here. So we have the opportunity through this climate pollution reduction implementation grant is to build on that experience and to try and scale up and accelerate that work. Of course, everything that's proposed is consistent with EPA's framework and criteria. And in our view, at the heart of it, it's all practical. This is stuff that's familiar to us already. And so just a few quick slides to illustrate the point. The things that we're talking about, I think, are clearly familiar, whether it's on the building side or about renewable energy, if it's about transportation, urban greening and green infrastructure, or food, agriculture, and waste. The kinds of ideas that are reflected here and proposed in our grant application build upon all of that, and I think are clear, they're measurable, they're discrete, they're tangible, and will make a real difference. Our theory of change, this grant, is one of investing in a lot of different things that make a real difference, both in the short term and in the long term. But in everything that we propose to do, it's our hope that we're building capacity and building leadership so that over time, our whole community has the ability to deliver more climate action over time. So we're building community and we're building capacity at all levels, whether it's at neighborhoods or in communities or at the regional scale, the civic level. And that kind of leadership and the grown capacity and the partnerships that are embedded will, we believe, enable us to do more over time beyond the time frame of this grant. There's a lot of outcomes. Why would we be doing all of this work? And there's just so many reasons. We know that we can improve public health through making healthier homes or reducing urban heat islands. We can create jobs and help support forest development so that the contractors available to retrofit all of the homes and buildings that we propose to work on, or to take care of the EV charging ports that we will install, and so on. We know that we have times of excess heat and extreme cold, and we know that we need to be able to, as a community, respond to extreme weather and be able to withstand it and recover and bounce back. We believe that all of this work is enhancing quality of life, and we have this opportunity to really innovate in terms of what we do, how we do it, and who does it together with who else, right? There's just extraordinary opportunities for innovation. And all through this, we are confident not only that are we going to grow more jobs, but we're going to grow little businesses who are capable of working in the HVAC installation space, or in or working on home health, or working on ecosystem and watershed restoration. We know that as we reduce energy burdens in homes, we're supporting affordable housing. All of the work that we do, kind of looking at the right side of the screen, is in service of also very traditional environmental outcomes: the clean air, clean water, saving on energy and water use, reducing flood risk, creating wildlife habitat, producing local food, improving food security. There's a lot of different reasons we want to undertake this work. And I wanted to spend a minute here kind of going through this because it's important. This is the basis of it. And you may recall from February 15th, the presentation, I think I shared a very similar chart. And what we have here are all of the measures that were included in the Priority Climate Action Plan. So there are 4 groups of measures, right? Buildings and renewables, transportation, urban greening, and food, agriculture, and waste. And we thought, well, how is it that these will get mobilized around the community? What are we trying to do? And so we talk about public leadership first. In the realm of local governments and public agencies, there's a lot of demand for an opportunity to improve public buildings, improve transportation infrastructure, transition our public fleets to lower carbon consuming vehicles, to think differently about how we manage stormwater or enable the production of local food. This realm of public leadership creates opportunities for investment in things that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also help set the stage, we believe, for every local community to wrap its arms around this broad agenda and embrace those things that are highest priority in their communities. We want to work hard. We've heard over and over how we need to build up and strengthen our neighborhoods. And the proposal that we bring forward rests upon all of the measures that were in the PCAP, and that you'll see as I share budgets with you in a minute. We're talking about investing in resilience hubs, in quality housing, in weatherization, shared and subsidized e-bikes, heat island reduction, green stormwater infrastructure, regenerative agriculture, food waste reduction. These are discrete areas included in the PCAP that coalesce into an agenda that will fit different neighborhoods in different kinds of ways. And of course, we've said that we want to invest in our infrastructure. So whether that might be district scale energy generation, green transportation corridors, stream corridors, coasting infrastructure, and instance, we're thinking about these things also with respect to policy development opportunities, workforce development, how we can build more collaboration, engagement in our work, and how we can enhance the quality of that work through very high-level training and professional development. So this is the first of the budget slides that I'll share with you about the grant. We've said that we're going to work in 4 areas, and they're shown here. The largest of which is has to do with building energy efficiency and renewable energy. And the reason for that is very clear. When our greenhouse gas emissions inventory showed that 64%, 63% of our emissions are attributable to using energy in buildings, and we know that energy burdens in disadvantaged communities are absolutely severe. And so this is the largest pot of resources in our grant application, followed by transportation, which not coincidentally is also second on the list in terms of the sector responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, followed by investments in urban greening, stormwater management, agriculture, food, and waste. The final category includes project management, which we're committing not to exceed 5% of the total of the grant, workforce development, and community capacity building. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into each one of these different areas, and I imagine that y'all will have a variety of questions about these things as we move forward. But I'll begin with the building efficiency and renewable energy space. We're talking about building 20 resilience hubs, and focusing on 600 units of single-family retrofits and 12 on multifamily. We're proposing to invest. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Forgive me. So you see the general categories here: resilience hubs, quality housing, high performance buildings, and renewable energy. And we can, the resilience hubs piece stands on its own, so it's not reflected on this slide, but digging in a little bit deeper into the other measures, there's work on code adoption. Many local communities are interested in energy efficiency codes and other policy measures that can help us save energy as we undertake additional construction. The piece on single-family retrofits would be led by the Metro Coalition of nonprofits focused on minor home repair. And we believe that there's an opportunity led by Habitat for Humanity together with about 10 other organizations to build upon home repair efforts and interject energy efficiency, renewable energy efficiency investments into that space. I'd spoken before about weatherization. There's opportunities to work with Evergy on this, and through our resilience hubs and other spaces, to put weatherization kits out into the community. The greenhouse gas emission reduction number for that is staggeringly high at 518,000 tons of CO2 equivalents by 2050. And it's a relatively inexpensive, light touch, but distributed over a very large universe of households, which makes a huge difference. On the multifamily space, we're talking about investing in high-performance buildings and 15 multifamily units, and undertaking a whole lot of community education and assistance here to help other homeowners benefit from IRA tax credits and incentives and utility programs and more, so that folks can learn how to do this for themselves, even if they're not in a position to benefit from grant resources. On this measure 3, high performance buildings, there's 3 groups here. We're talking about public buildings. We know that there's a lot of community centers and city-owned facilities and courthouses and school buildings, all of which have substantial need and create substantial opportunities for significant investment. The opportunity in the commercial space, we believe that we can make a really big dent in moving the market by demonstrating a better way of building in ways that is incredibly high performing and that helps move the market to help builders and designers and building owners understand different models for what the building space can include. And certainly there's been a strong interest in investment in urban farm related buildings to make them more energy efficient and to include solar. The fourth one, renewable energy, the largest investment there would be for Vicinity, the downtown heating and cooling loop, where we have proposed 3,000-ton electric chiller that would be part of their infrastructure to heat and cool the whole, 11 million square feet of space in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. So a single investment there has a very broad implication. Additionally, we have a very significant amount of funds reserved for solar installations on different building types, if they're nonprofits, if they're resilient hubs, if they're urban farms, if they're in other spaces. Moving to transportation, there are 5 measures here that are listed, thinking about green streets, bike lanes, e-bikes, EV charging stations, and supporting fleet transitions in public agencies. And each of these are very significant elements that of course, intersect with all of the things in the next category in urban greening. In fact, the tree planting budget here shown here is, for the purposes of our grant organization, it's reflected under urban greening, but about a third of the trees that we had planted in this program would be along streets, is trying to green them up and reduce heat islands and make streets more walkable. There would be another 10,000 or so trees that would be planted, some by bridging the gap, some that would be made available to community groups who have an interest. And that would be complemented in turn by an investment in native landscaping. Our deep-rooted native plant palette is just an extraordinary thing. It supports heat island reduction and provides so many other co-benefits. The second piece is about riparian corridor restoration and green stormwater infrastructure. We propose to restore 100 acres of riparian habitat and reserve other funds to make available for interested community groups to restore additional riparian areas and natural areas across the community. On the green stormwater infrastructure side, there's a ton of interest around the community in trying to understand how we can use ecologically informed stormwater design and implementation strategies to meet multiple community needs. And so the amount of money shown here would enable us to install 35 green acres. 1 green acre would treat the runoff from an acre of impervious area. And so it's a very substantial amount of funding that would let us make progress there. We're including a small amount of resources to support the local adoption and training around the new stormwater standards that are under development. As those become implemented over the generation, the stream setbacks and stream buffers and rain gardens and bioretention and everything else that comes with that has the opportunity to sequester absolutely vast amounts of carbon. And certainly there's additional budget allocated here for more community education and technical assistance as well. Moving to agriculture, food, and waste systems, it's worth noting at the top line that in the PCAP there were a variety of proposed investments that have been reflected in the buildings category that had to do with building efficiency investments in solar. So while those could be funded under that other category of the grant, that some of that funding could flow to local farms, whether it's a resilience hub or a project that would benefit from efficiency improvements or solar. The Kansas City Community Gardens and Giving Grove proposes to install 36 orchards and 150 gardens at local schools and community centers and conduct substantial more outreach to multiply that number. There's demand for energy efficient farming equipment, from forklifts to compressors or refrigerators. The thing that I think we heard the most in our convenings is an interest in boosting regional capacity for commercial composting. And so you see a very substantial investment proposed there with an absolutely massive return in terms of greenhouse gas reduction. There's a lot of interest in food and marrying up the topics of food waste reduction and food security, that where there's very substantial opportunities, along with more investment in community education and assistance. Now I'm on to my final slide in terms of the summary stuff describing our budget. This category includes $22 million. Of that, $7.5 million would support workforce development at the workforce investment agencies and community colleges to support training of plumbers, electricians, contractors, energy auditors. We have been in discussion with UMKC to build out our community capacity for collaborative program evaluation, capacity building, and leadership development in communities, and trying to understand how we can construct this overall program such that it has hyper levels of community engagement that inform all aspects of the project, starting from project framing to setting of criteria and decision processes, to allocating funds, to implementing projects, evaluating the back end, and iterating. All of that work needs to be conducted with absolutely high levels of community engagement, and that's our intention to do so. On the project management side, at MARC, this project would require us to hire a whole new set of accountants and project managers, along with providing for technical staff to support this activity in different kinds of ways. And so over a 5-year period, our budget is shaping up to be somewhere on this number. In terms of the administrative structure of how we would roll this out, this is a way oversimplified graphic for what is clearly going to be an incredibly complex endeavor. And so at every turn, as we talk about this internally, we dive into the complexity and into these various rabbit holes, and we're trying to come out and say, well, how do we simplify? How do we communicate this in a way that makes sense? MARC has a Climate Environment Council that is our lead committee on this set of issues, appointed to help shepherd the implementation of the Regional Climate Action Plan. And it is our thought to create 3 community advisory boards to guide the investments on public agency investments, on community and nonprofit investments, and on building specific investments. There certainly is overlap among those 3 things, so I don't yet know how to sort it out in a way that's most efficient. But the ideas that we have here, we want to be accountable, we want to be transparent, and we want to be inclusive, and we want to be smart about how we use the money. So there's a whole nother way of unpacking this budget. And the premise here is that we're chasing a whole lot of money, right? And we believe that there's something here for everyone. And so we are framing this up. There's 4 buckets. I just talked about the management and capacity building and workforce piece. There's 3 other ones through which we would deploy our resources. At the beginning, there would be a small number of what we're calling instigative featured projects. I'll share more about that in a second. There's a whole bunch of work that would be undertaken through a programmatic approach, whether the single family retrofits or tree planting, for example. And third, the balance, it would be funding competitions through these community advisory boards. So that's the largest piece of the money, that $134 million. We would be issuing requests for proposals to enable the community to respond to and access these funds in a transparent, accountable, inclusive manner. And along the way, as we do that, we would ensure that there's resources available to support anybody who has an interest in this in preparing applications so that they are so that they're competitive in an equitable manner. Coming to these instigative projects, we wanted to, at the beginning, hit the ground running. And there were too many projects and too many ideas to just, figure out how do we get started. And so there were a few that, our Climate Environment Council established a number of criteria for evaluating some of the things that came in the door to say, can we just fund a couple things to hit the ground running, show initial successes, and do that even as we then prepare these competitions. And so there are, I've grouped these instigative projects into two categories. Some are projects and some are programs. The projects in the green and the programs in the teal. And we thought that there's an opportunity to fund a resilience hub, solar parking canopy, and an important trail connection at the beginning, along with riparian restoration on the Blue River and a district heating and cooling loop, the Vicinity Project, along with front-loading work and at a programmatic level so that we can get going on home retrofits, weatherization, tree planting, electric bikes, and the capacity building work. So we'd have a lot to do to get started as we're ramping up our ability to push the money out the door to undertake more work. In terms of the overall timeline, we're submitting this grant by April 1st. EPA has said that we would hear back by July. We'll see if they're able to do that on their side. They're as crunched for time as we are on ours. It's a lot to review all of these applications. If we're successful, I'm inventing this date of January 2025, but it's probably likely. It usually takes some number of months to negotiate a contract and then to begin getting organized to launch activities. So a January 2025 launch date, if our grant is successful, is probably a reasonable thing. And this grant would then have a 5-year implementation schedule. So I'm going to stop there. I've spoken really fast and I've shared whole bunch of stuff. I'd welcome your thoughts or questions. It's 12:30. I was planning to do that in 25 minutes. It took me 29. So we've got a full 30 minutes for discussion, and I'll do the best that I can to respond to any questions you might have.
Tom, we have a couple of questions in the chat if we want to touch on those first.
Very good. Let me pull the chat up. How will cities apply for sub-grants, presuming MARC wins the CPRG application? From Bill Blessing. Bill, the intention would be, I described this notion of a community advisory board, 3 of them. One of them would be focused on managing a procurement for local governments, whether it would be to retrofit a building, build a bike lane, green a street, plant trees, pursue a green stormwater infrastructure project, or whatever. That would be one of the money that we would administer through an RFP process. Next question I have is from Matt Kleiman. It's good to hear that Evergy is engaged. Is BPU engaged? The answer, Matt, is yes. I just had a conversation with the CFO at BPU yesterday. It is their intention to apply on their own for a CPRG grant to pursue community solar and unified government. The formula that he explained to me is that 5 megawatts would serve roughly 1,000 households at a cost of $10 million. And so the need in KCK exceeds whatever level of money he could bring in. He's intending to pursue a grant, and we, of course, are 100% supportive of their application. Our hope is that we would not be competing directly against them because we would be competing in different tiers of funding requests. Carl Stafford, can workforce development programs include apprenticeship programs? The answer is absolutely yes. I think it's our intention. I'm not able to dive super deep into this here because one, it's not my area of expertise, and two, I don't think we've had enough discussion yet with the entities involved to get into too much level of detail. But the answer unquestionably is yes, and it will be our job to figure out the details. Joe, were you taking notes?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Under workforce development, I assume it would include college students and professionals in KC Industries. Kansas City is the top engineering city in the U.S. Is that right? Second, the contents would fill the gap in climate literacy that our past or current curricula lack. Goodness. I think the way that we're thinking about this probably has more to do with the trades, thinking about plumbers, contractors, electricians, roofers, auditors, than it does with college level training that would connect to the Burns and McDonald's and Black and Veatches and HNTBs of the world. That said, I think we need to connect the dots there. I think we've had some discussions with UMKC about how some of that could happen, but it certainly warrants more conversation. And the gap is clear. None of us would debate it. So the question would be, how could we use these resources to not only work with community colleges and workforce investment boards and link folks who will go through those training programs to get them placed in jobs, whether at contractors or engineering firms, but in turn link our work to the university so that we're filling the gap at that level of instruction. Let's see, Billy Davies, adding on to Matt Kleinman's comment, there are numerous community groups working on lift up voices in the UG service territory, and many home health workers at the UG want to engage community members but cannot without funding from CPRG. Billy, so we interacted quickly previously on some of this. The one thing that I can say unequivocally is that we're building into our budget a whole variety of different mechanisms to support community groups working to, as you say, lift up voices, right? And maybe that would be in partnership with home health workers or others. But what I'm not prepared today to say specifically how that might happen, but I am able to say that we're allocating resources for this purpose that we would have to figure out how to deploy in the smartest way possible if our grant is successful. There's so many moving parts to all of this that we aren't able to answer every question like this clearly because it's just so complicated. But I think that we'll have the resources to be able to do meaningful work like you proposed. Next, Carrie Coleman, is there room in the budget for training on enacting behavior change within the community and also within our civic corporate systems? 100%. There is, we'd have to discuss, how we would be defining our terms about the appropriate trainings for enacting behavior change. We have been we've been working closely in a subcommittee from the CEC and together with Barclay on developing a regional climate communications and social marketing program whose goal would be to drive behavior change relative to how folks are, to the degree to which folks are weatherizing their homes or installing more efficient appliances or systems or insulating the attic or the rim joists. So, or if they're planting trees or eating healthy food or how they're traveling around the community. And so there's a very well-developed concept that it's our intention to support that's all about driving behavior change in the community in ways that align directly with our grant outcomes and in turn support the specific objectives and the different sort of programmatic elements that we've described. Ashley Sadowski, yes, there's significant funding in the budget for this, which includes consumer campaigns and more grassroots educational programming. Ashley, do you want to share any more detail?
No, I just wanted to address Carrie's question. And on the building side, which is the side I can speak mostly to, on a number of the different pieces, whether it's single family, multifamily, commercial, there's a ton of educational programming that come with that. Some of that's going to be broad consumer awareness, but a lot of it is going to be very targeted to key audiences that we want to essentially move to a higher performance, low carbon part of the marketplace. So quite a bit of that work is part of how we make this happen. A lot of the projects that Tom named in the building section are really, particularly on the commercial scale, are intended on being demonstration projects. So that we can see a number of like really key projects across the region that show significant energy efficiency measures, solar, renewables, etc., to really change the way we view how we build buildings. To elaborate on any of that.
Okay. Thanks, Ashley.
Tom, did you see Emily Wolf's question?
I'm getting there. I'm going to go to Leslie Scott's, and then I'll get to Emily's. Leslie just noted that Reuseful is willing to dive into more of the individual behavior space. Well, let's talk about how we can work together. That's what all this is about. So thank you. Emily Wolf asks, do we have locations identified for the hubs? We do not. We would have yet to configure how this process would unfold in detail, but it would be our intention to gather folks from in the community to talk about, well, what is a hub and who might have an interest in pursuing that, and to provide resources to folks to begin thinking about how they could develop their concept into a potential hub. And based on some front-end planning and technical support and talking to anybody that we can find who might have an interest, share what this opportunity is, talk through how we might work towards the identification and development of the hubs and for this grant and move them forward. So no, we don't have locations identified. Scratch that, with one exception. Among the priority locations for year one, or instigative projects for year one, we have been in discussion with Kansas City Public Library about their Bluford Library at 31st and Prospect being an initial hub. It's located along a transit corridor. It's an active neighborhood with a lot of affordable housing development activity. There's incredible community support for doing this sort of work and opportunities to use that site to reach out to surrounding neighbors. So the intention would be to invest in energy efficiency and solar, and maybe support some of the other elements of the grant, and use that as a preliminary example of a hub. But from there, we would launch planning processes to identify the rest, and then have competitive funding processes to deploy those funds. Who is going to make up the Community Advisory Committee? How will those members be chosen, and will each community have representation? Teresa, that's a fantastic question, and I appreciate it. I can't answer in specifics. What I can say is we want to be inclusive, we want to be diverse, we want to have representation from all parts of the community, and so that we would create opportunities for these advisory committees to reflect our community at large, so that these groups can then begin making decisions about, what are our decision processes, what are our criteria, how do we flow these out in ways that achieve all of our goals. If we have 3 community advisory committees, plus our CEC, plus the folks who are involved in all the different networks that are interacting with the folks on these cabs, it's our hope that there would be a ton of engagement and diverse and fair and equitable representation on these bodies. So the specifics of it, we're going to need to invent if we get this grant, but the elements of how we'd go about it and the nature of those committees, I think that my description reasonably represents how we would want to think about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a topic, Teresa, that warrants a lot more discussion. I will say that MARC has a whole lot of different committees, and sometimes we do it better than other times. What I think will distinguish the processes here from some of the other ones is there will be much more intentional focus on diversity and community representation, and there will also be a special focus on pushing out projects through collaborative processes that are intentional about partnership-based work that provides multiple benefits. So I think those sorts of qualities might be important as we try and fill out the rosters of those groups. Okay, Joseph Nelson, what is the plan for soil testing and environmental cleanup? Particularly prior to supporting community gardens and tree planting, there's known significant contamination in previous lead-lined communities. How can we add this as a separate line item in the budget? The funds allocated to public schools should be higher than the funds allocated to commercial. Okay, I appreciate that comment. We'll definitely think about that as we're massaging our budgets. I appreciate that.
Can I add a comment to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the commercial funding is actually going to come in the form of a revolving loan fund. So all of the projects outside of commercial, nonprofit housing, public buildings, schools, that will all be grant funding. Commercial is distinct because we're using it as an opportunity to create some kind of low cost loan mechanism that we can actually use these funds past year 5. So this can be something where we invest in projects with the opportunity to continue to invest after the majority of the grant funding has been used.
Thank you. On the first question about lead cleanup, contaminated soils, we have not set aside a separate item here. We are well aware of the city's brownfield programs, and there's some overlap between what their priorities are and what we're talking about. I think what we might want to do is, I think your suggestion about adding this as a line item in the budget is really worth taking a stronger look at, because those problems are certainly pervasive.
May I add something?
Please, sir. Yeah.
The Brownsfield process, sometimes, particularly with the first level assessment, can miss a lot of the contamination if they don't know the previous structure, or they just happen to miss it. The other piece is that it takes over a year. So several of the projects that have been seeking Brownsfield's money are in their second or third year, still waiting to do the mitigation. Some have even gone up because the buildings on some of them have grown worse over the years, so now they need even more mitigation. So I just wanted to add that. So having a separate line item and working with them to maybe either accelerate that process or to do a more in-depth assessment would definitely help.
So I agree with everything that you said. And from the perspective of being an applicant to the CPRG grant, EPA's perspective, how are we maximizing GHG benefits in ways that provide maximum benefit to EJ communities? And they would probably say, if we're going to think about brownfield remediation and cleanup, that it should be through other programs, because those have been well funded through the BIL and IRA. So that's not an excuse to not do it, but it does, some of those sort of cleanup activities wouldn't contribute directly to GHG emissions reduction. And so therein lies some of the tension that I feel about how far we might go down this line. There's the need is vast. There's no question about it. Okay, next question. Britton Burnett, are all the projects listed in the PCAP submission Excel spreadsheet approved for funding, or what percentage of funding will be regranted? The answer is no. Not all of the projects listed in the PCAP submission spreadsheet are approved for funding. I think in some ways that document is intended to be much more specific than the original climate action plan, but still more than could be undertaken just through this grant. In terms of the percentage of funding that would be re-granted, so I had shared a graphic with you that there's roughly $29 million that would be deployed through this programmatic approach, and $134 million of, roughly 195 that would be available through the re-granting process. So I guess the answer would be somewhere around 65%.
And Tom, I'll just add to that those PCAP submissions really speak to the spirit of all of the project grants that we've included in CPRG. So the idea being that we wanted to create grants that if we were awarded, that we could turn to community members and say, we have a number of projects waiting in the wings that fit this criteria. So it gives us tremendous clout with the EPA to show have hundreds of projects that are waiting in the wings to do this work. And that we've designed the grant application to fit those project types. So understand that that's a big piece of this application, and that those are opportunities to be part of the sub-grant process.
Okay, for the next one, how do we know if we were selected as an instigative project or got some weird icon that keeps me from reading the full thing, or we'll pursue a general RFP project. The CEC, the Climate Environment Council, met and was supportive of, I think it's 5 instigative projects. I'm sorry that I didn't write them down. We're looking at a solar project in the city of Grandview, the Blueford Library Resilience Hub, the Unified Government Heritage Trail, the Heartland Conservation Alliance, Blue River Restoration, and oh my goodness, I'm so sorry for forgetting the 5th. And at the same time, we would be funding the launch at a programmatic level of all of the items that I had shared on a previous slide. So, so that's where we are. So I think the zoo would be one of those entities that we would encourage you strongly to pursue funding through the competitive process. Let's see, Carrie from the City of Mission, assuming that the budget line items can overlap on any given project, and that will be a consideration we apply for funding through MARC. Will the RFP allow us to identify those overlapping categories measures with estimates for how much money from each budgetary item we would request from each category? Likewise, any chance for weighted consideration for project proposals that hit several different categories? So it's we have lined up our grant proposal with budget items in these 4 different categories. Our expectation would be that a neighborhood group might have an interest in item, or a city would have an interest in items in more than one category and would apply accordingly. So I think that's our expectation, Carrie, that cities would do that. It would be the job of the committees, the advisory boards, to establish the criteria. The spirit of our grant is to establish measures that are mutually reinforcing and ideally creating different kinds of synergies and efficiencies. So I would think that would be reflected in the criteria that we would develop. Not sure if I know how to say more than that, but I think you're anticipating exactly where this is going to go.
Thank you. That answered my question well. Thanks a lot.
Good. Joseph Nelson, several community organizations are having difficulty obtaining land from the land bank due to increases in market pricing. How can funds be allocated in taking ownership and environmental assessment and cleanup? I will confess I'm still not clear about the eligibility of land acquisition with our grant funds. If it is an eligible expense, and if neighborhood organization wanted to pursue something that was aligned with the criteria outlined in this grant, I would think that would be a terrific kind of project. It's something that we would have to clarify in terms of the administrative regulations under this program. And we talked about environmental assessment and cleanup before. I would think that we could look at that to some degree, but there's a tension with the broader program goals. Okay, Leslie, could there be a partnership with local universities to create a circular economy certificate program that might be easier than modifying longstanding curriculum? There's been an articulation of interest in doing exactly that. I don't know if that's a certificate program, but there certainly is interest in the topic. So it sounds like an idea well worth exploring more. Tamara, Leslie, the economics department faculty at UMKC is working on this issue. Thank you. You anticipated my through the concept of a certificate. It's intriguing. I think there'd be interest there. Well, I think you two need to talk. Let's see, Leslie. Okay, good. More from Leslie Scott. Making it interdisciplinary would be interesting. 100%. All of this work is always beneficial when viewed from multiple perspectives. Luso, the new Bethel Center in KCK at 7th and Central would be a good resilience hub. They already have new addition multi-purpose room that can be a tornado shelter. That's exactly the kind of information that I think that we want to look at. I mean, there's no question that we would want to establish resilience hubs in different parts of the community, largely in neighborhoods of need. And so if there are locations like that, then I think if we were to receive this grant, what I would want to do is learn more about what you're doing and have a conversation about how we could take the efficacy of that facility to an even higher level with the grant funds available to it. I'm thrilled to hear about the work at New Bethel Center. Joseph Nelson, how can we allocate funding to support small business development as a follow-on to workforce development investment? Ashley, would you like to talk just for a moment about rising trades?
Sure. Yeah. So we, Building Energy Exchange has been running a program called Rising Trades Contractor Accelerator for the past 3 years. We have been partnered with Seed Collective, which is a local organization, Elevate Energy and Business Services Collective out of Chicago. We do a number of workforce elements to that, but the really key element to it is really building up businesses, growing our entrepreneurs, providing them 40 hours of back office support, and connecting them to clean energy opportunities and high performance building practices. So that's one component where we're working in the entrepreneurship space and also in the workforce space. And then also I just wanted to mention, as far as just supporting small businesses, the commercial building loans that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, that's a highly competitive process, and in projects that are more attuned to small businesses and outcomes that would benefit small businesses based on lowering their energy costs would be elevated in that process. So that's another place where we can impact small businesses.
Thank you. Kendall Reese asks about technical training for new green infrastructure stormwater standards. We have requested resources to support specific trainings. It's our expectation that the APWA membership will vote to adopt those new standards in May of 2025. We hope followed quickly by local government adoption of those standards across the metro. Concurrently, we would offer a set of trainings for interested design engineers and planners and others, landscape architects, to get everybody trained up over the next couple of years. And so we would provide trainings to support that work. Will any of the funding categories support development and education of new green building materials? There is one project that was submitted through the project portal that's under development, submitted by the Foundation for Regeneration, that is proposed to install gasification and torrefication units that produce biochar aligned with a new composting facility, and they propose to develop processes to create high quality sustainable building materials from the biochar and from their processes. So that's one specific element. I would think that as we contemplate all of the work in the different building sectors that are shown here, that there'd be a lot of opportunity to explore different materials and to conduct training to share what's worked and what hasn't and how we could do more. Let's see, MLA. I've seen comments about workforce development. MEC kicked off our $6.8 million project for the region. We have over 30 partners, including Richard Mabian. For those commenting about KCK, one of our biggest partners is the community college. And she posted a link for their newsletter and suggesting to contact Mary English to learn more. Thank you. That's super helpful, Emily. Daniel Purrier. Many of the PCAP projects are quite comprehensive, expensive, and complicated. Will the regranting of funds seek to fund comprehensive visions, or will funding be more specific and piecemeal, i.e. funding only solar on a site versus funding solar along with additional elements like composting, water harvesting, education? So the spirit of our grant is more the latter than the former. We were hoping that we're going to be able to support projects that are more synthetic, more holistic, that help contribute to resilience at a neighborhood or community scale, right? And so we don't want to just spread the money around like peanut butter. We want to make a difference, and we believe that part of the way we can do that is by knitting together projects with different elements that are mutually reinforcing. That, of course, our ability to do that will be dependent to some degree on what kinds of projects people come in with. Leslie asks, could there be a partnership with local universities? Oh, I think we covered that one already. I'm sorry. Ashley, your audio is hard to hear. Sullivan, are there opportunities for environmental nonprofits to partner with the city to work on some of these projects? 100%. And, you know, so I described how we might organize through 3 different solicitations with cities, for nonprofits and communities, and sort of on infrastructure projects. It's very clear that there's a lot of things that bleed over between these categories, and one of our jobs is to figure out how to build whatever the right collaborations are that make sense to drive these sorts of projects. I think that's a great question, and it's exactly on point. Okay, Omar asks, for the certificate at UMKC block, you can reach me. I'm a consultant for this. And he posted his email, ommvc@missouri.edu. And from UMKC, do hubs mostly mean a retrofitting project, or can it be integrated with education and workforce development, for example, some sort of smart hubs providing knowledge dissemination? I love your concept. I mean, in some sense, you're talking about a virtual hub that has much broader reach. We've had conversations about it. I think it's a terrific idea. It's one that we'd have to sort out in our process, right? I think the way we've budgeted for this work is for specific high performance building improvements, energy efficiency improvements, and solar installation, along with perhaps other measures like the gardens or trees or EV charging or bike share, that kind of thing. But if we need to broaden our understanding of what a hub is or could be, we have the latitude to do that. Ashley commented about that as well.
Yeah, Richard Mabian had a Justice 40 question.
What about Justice 40 money and management? Okay, I would imagine we've gone through this budget and combed through it a variety of different ways. And at first blush, I'd be blown away if more than 65% of this money didn't directly benefit Justice 40 communities. So that's just a starting point for conversation. All of the framing for this work is designed to directly address issues that have been well articulated in our different conversations over time, whether it's energy burdens or water burdens or home health or job access or food security, or and the list goes on. So Ashley and I were both earlier talking about how we've budgeted a lot of resources to support community and capacity building for community-based organizations and Justice 40 communities, and to ensure that our decision processes in turn have appropriate and meaningful representation, so that guides how we're actually allocating the resources provided here. So those are a few different ways that we've thought about it. And Richard, I know that the water is deep here, and I'd welcome more conversations about that in the future. And that's
We
it.
have one last big question. Billy's got his hand raised, if you want to call on him. And
All right, Billy.
And I'm sorry, you might have, my internet's also been a little spotty, so I might have missed you responding to it. It was kind of, it was following up on the public engagement thread, but specifically related to the possibility of MARC applying funds from the CPRG to help stakeholders engage in non-legislative public stakeholder processes. So thinking rulemakings, rate cases, integrated resource plans before agencies or cities or utility commissions. So especially in cases that impact the deployment of renewable energy, and or in some cases encouraging utilities and local jurisdictions to move away from fossil fuels. I know some cities are already doing this, notably Kansas City Mo, and its plan, I think. But just wondering if that's a fit for the cross-cutting measures and educational section, kind of building the competence to for communities to help advocate for these good policies. Is that something that's being considered in the plan implementation?
I'm going to take a side swipe at a response. The EPA's intention with this money is not to support advocacy. I mean, it's not what this is about. And we have framed up a process that is very focused on capacity building at all levels. If we were successful in that, then hopefully that capacity could be deployed for the benefit of communities in ways that meet local priorities. In terms of direct advocacy for an integrated resource plan or reaching out to the Kansas Corporation Commission or something like that, that's outside of the realm of what we're proposing to do here. All right, let's see. AJ, thank you for your comment. Carrie, thank you. Omar, thank you. It looks like I'm winding down to the bottom of the comments. I don't see any more. I'm not sure how many people are still online. I'm happy to stay here until we've answered the questions. And seeing none.
looks like there's a question from Matt Kleinman.
Matt?
He's asking, will there be a map of projects funded?
We on our end, it's very easy for us to generate maps of things that we fund, and so we could easily do that as this thing moves forward. It's a good idea.
And it looks like Carl Stafford's got his hand up.
Carl?
Just want to know if you was able to receive the email that was sent to you.
Thank you, sir. I did. I apologize for not responding. You can see where I've been putting my attention.
Right, and I appreciate that, and like thank you all for what y'all doing. The grassroots nonprofit organization, and I'm just speaking on my behalf, is still trying to find their place in it. And so that's why I sent that email. And so if we could have a one-on-one to dictate, because I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time with this.
No, Carl,
Again, grassroots nonprofit.
Let's do that. I will tell you that we've given more than a little bit of attention and time to this issue. I'm if what we have shared today doesn't seem to paint a picture that you can see yourself in, then we need to do better. We have put in our budget very substantial resources to support nonprofits and community-based organizations to engage in this work, to develop project ideas, to implement project ideas, to work together to see how well it's working, to participate in workforce programs and training programs that make it better. So I can say at that very high level, at the that would guide what we would submit to EPA at this time. There are meaningful buckets of money that support that kind of activity. How we go about doing it, there's several different ideas that are on the table, all of which are open for conversation, so we do it the best way possible. But I've been paying attention to you, Carl, and I'm hoping that the kinds of that your comments are reflected in what we're going to submit in terms of our grant budget. And that said, I would like very much to get together. Yes.
Thank you.
You got it.
We've got a couple people asking about who to reach out to if they have any questions about the grant application process.
If you have questions, reach out to me, Karen, or Emily. Each of us, if we're still on, can type our emails on here. I'm doing that now. If you have additional thoughts, questions, reach out and we'll get back with you. Can I quickly recap the timeline? Assuming, okay, so Lisa, if it's a challenge for me to answer with too much specificity here. It would be, we'd gear up as quickly as we can to start pushing money out so that we can do all the good work contemplated. And if we, I'm imagining that we could take 3 to 6 months to get a contract together with EPA, which would then, the next steps would be staffing up and so on. And creating these processes. So it wouldn't be turning on a dime, that we'd go as fast as we could. Let me see. Emily, thank you. Karen, thank you for putting your information. Carl, thank you. Carrie, thank you. All right, well, I appreciate everybody taking a minute to participate in this call. I think that your questions were just spot on overall. I wish I knew how to answer all of them. Some of these things we're going to have to sort out if we get this money together, right? And that's how we do it. And we're trying our best to make a persuasive argument to EPA to give us this kind of money. And if we get it, then the way we roll it out, we'll be figuring it out together. And it wouldn't be money that just come to MARC and then we make unilateral decisions. That's just not how it happens in this office. So, okay, thank you all. It's a pleasure to see you. And thank you.